this evening and 3 additional presentations tomorrow evening. Our presentations on Monday and Tuesday night are already posted to the McQuaid Jesuit website, as will tonight's and tomorrow's presentation. So again, thank you for joining us. Our lineup tonight, I'll introduce John Baynes in a minute, but John will be doing our first session. Ian Mortimer, who is the president at the Golisano Institute for Business and Entrepreneurship, will be on board at 6:30, and then our own Jeff Griffa will be doing a presentation tonight at 7:30. But really happy to have John Baynes with us. Quick introduction. John was a longtime English teacher at Fairport High School. After he retired from Fairport High School, worked for the last several years as an English teacher at at Our Lady of Mercy High School. And John and I have known each other for, 40 plus years. And we run a summer program together at Nazareth College called Camp College Prep, where we do a lot of work with kids in college essay writing. There aren't too many people around to have more experience and knowledge of college essay writing than John does. So we're really fortunate to have him here tonight. Before John begins his presentation, let me just preface it a little bit. From a college counseling standpoint, I think that the college essay has always been an integral part of the college application. Over the last couple of years, at the onset of COVID and coming out of COVID, I think the college essay has taken on more importance than it ever has. And there's a couple of reasons behind that. As a result of COVID, many colleges went test optional. So there's a metric or a piece of the puzzle that is no longer available to many college admissions offices. Transcripts have become very difficult to decipher. A lot of high schools went to pass-fail. Some were hybrid learning. So all of a sudden, transcripts are difficult to ascertain and to compare. And really, it's taken a couple of really important pieces away from the college admissions folks when they're trying to make decisions, which, like I said, has made the essay and the personal narrative is taken on added importance. So that's what John's going to talk about tonight. He has some real creative approaches to writing a powerful essay. And John, I'm going to mute myself, but I'll be right here. And when you need me to share the screen, just let me know.
Sure. Well, thank you, John. So I'm going to put my email address up here. And it's my first name, John, my middle name, Burns, and my last name, Baynes, JOHNBURNSBAYNES @gmail.com. So that if you do have questions during the presentation, I have my phone here. I will keep my eye out and periodically check it and see if you have questions, and we'll integrate them into our discussion. I don't know if I learned this from Bob Dylan but I don't particularly like technology, so I do everything in a really analog way. I'm going to hold up signs. Okay, so this says college essay with quotes around essay. And then it says increasing importance ? And John just addressed the increasing importance. And I had notes that were actually identical. We didn't plan that to his comments. But I will add one third reason why it's so important. We live in the age of plagiarism. We live in an age when people cheat. And I think that the college admissions community has developed a kind of detector for those who are not writing these essays, for essays which seem to have been written by committee and which just kind of don't pass the smell test in terms of the language facility involved in the essay as it might relate to the student's overall profile, whether it's the transcript or any scores that the student has submitted. So I do want to start by saying that as much as students need readers, and I am a reader of student essays and have been for, as John said, over 40 years. I've been working with my own students. I do this work for 40 years. I've done it with my own students. I use the college essay as a way of teaching writing. But it's very important that the student write the essay, and that nobody else really kind of takes the student's voice and control away from it. So just kind of an opening comment. Now, the reason why I put quotes around the word essay is that it's not an essay, and that's what we call it. So it's important that students kind of throw out the ideas they have about essays that they may have been taught by their great teachers, because those teachers are teaching them to write essays for a specific purpose, for a specific reader, in a specific context. And typically those essays are all about fidelity to the task, fidelity to the prompt, and students in many ways do kind of stuff their own personalities. They work in a kind of objective, neutral way. And there's nothing neutral about the personal statement. And we're going to call it that from now on in this seminar, the personal statement of the college personal statement. It's very important that it do two things. So I got another one of my little very impressive notes here. There are two things we're trying to accomplish, and the admissions folks are trying to accomplish. First is they're auditioning a student writer. So students should be doing work, selecting topics and treating them in a way that they can handle, that show off their skills. This is really a writing sample. You may be familiar with that from your professional life where you've had to provide a writing sample. And then the second thing that it does is it introduces the humanity of the student. It shows the growth of the student as a person. And that's the theme you'll see. John's going to put up the Common App, and you're going to see that the theme of all of the Common App essays is growth. So when we talk about growth, we're talking about self-awareness. Would be great if we were all more self-aware, but I need to work on it too. But it's a lot of pressure. You're 17 and you're writing this personal statement, and you have to bring forth for a stranger, and we'll talk about the specific approach of the reader, but bring forth for them a real strong kind of human sense of what it is to have lived your life as a 17-year-old. And that involves a tremendous amount of self-reflection. And, you know, we as Americans, we're not in love with self-reflection, a lot of us. And the older we get, the better we get at it. So it's a lot to ask of young people to be incredibly self-reflective and kind of judge their growth. And that's why it's a great idea to start these essays way early. You know, if you write them the night before they're due, you may be lucky and hit the lottery and come up with a document that you represents you beautifully and works for you. But I wouldn't recommend that. I think that sometimes students have to write 5 or 6 of these before they hit the one that works. It's like writing a song or painting or anything else. A lot of students are stubbornly going to try to make their one idea work, and a lot of the ideas don't work. So when we write, and the reason why it's not an essay is because we want to write what I would call the personal radio experience, where the reader, you ever been in your car or you ever listened to the radio and you felt like you were alone with the voice, that it's communicating to you in a very direct way. And that's what I would call intimacy. There's no guard, there's no distance, and you feel like you're being spoken to directly. We want the reader of this essay to sense the authenticity of the student. And so we call that voice in writing. And we call that, I'm just going to hold this up there. My handwriting's not so hot, but we call it a kind of authentic voice. And it involves language that is genuine, that is not thesaurus driven. It's a terrible idea for a student writer to pull out a thesaurus and try to use multisyllabic Latinate language or borrowings from European languages when those are not the natural writing pattern of the student. Students should write in their natural voices. and do so in such a way that, again, we have the readers are confident that they can tell when the student is not authentic. And that's a red flag. And they don't have to explain why students are rejected. They don't have to explain it. And the more selective the school, the more important the essay. So, John's kids have all gone to college. Mine have. I've coached. I have one of my former students is at Harvard now. I have another one at Yale. I have another one at Princeton. I have another one at University of Pennsylvania. My own children went through these similar type of experiences. And the college essay is important because what they're doing is they're saying, who is this person? And is this the person we want to hang around with for 4 years? What will they bring that's different? I use kind of like the bus ride test. Would you want to go on a really long bus ride with this person? And if the answer is no, that's not good, right? So understanding the reader is the first aspect of self-awareness. And the students who do well understand that the reader is what we call, in my classroom, the impatient stranger. So the reader, let's think about our audience. The reader is reading, in her office at the admissions department, maybe 75 of these essays as she or he reviews these packets of documents and makes admissions decisions and then confers with other admissions counselors who are also reading it. So we want to do is deliver the message to the reader in the most efficient way. Talk a little bit about the editing process in a minute. And we want to do it in a way that we're not asking the reader to work that hard. When you write an essay and you show it to your mom and dad, or you show it to your teacher, they're your advocates. All right. And they're going to be more patient. The impatient stranger is not patient, saying, I'm not interested in all this extraneous material you're sharing with me. Get to the point. So, for instance, the typical length of a college essay is 600 words to say 700. If you can write a great essay in 400 words, you should absolutely do it, because that's sensitive to the impatient stranger. All right, so as we talk about getting started, one of the things I think is a real problem for kids is they think they have to have a unique story. That, and I put the universal slash through that. The kids will say, oh, well, nothing ever happened to me. And my response to them is, you must be the most shallow person around if nothing has ever happened to you. You've never seen a leaf frozen into the glaze on a pond just at the first freeze. You've never seen the moon come up through the trees. I mean, the kids think that they need to kind of pull out of their biography some cataclysmic event that would make headlines, if you will, in the news of the world. And that is a really bad way of looking at this. Now, there may be some students who have had events happen to them that are extremely unusual, and hopefully they've been happy ones. Often extremely unusual events are traumatic. And one of the things I caution kids to do is, what I've learned from trauma is that I'm traumatized. It's not necessarily the greatest pathway or a portal to reflection. It's more of a pathway to pain. So the way I put it to students is that, yes, your experience that you write about, and we'll look at the sample questions in a moment, but your experience is going to be common almost all the time. But your reaction or reflection to the experience is the uncommon part. So if students say, well, I want to write about sports, well, I can't stand stories about sports myself. They're terrible. The personal statements about sports that most students write. And I would think that the the reader, the impatient stranger, feels the same way I do, because I've read thousands of these and they've read thousands of these. And often when they pick the sports experience, for instance, they'll pick something like, I got cut from the team. So they take about half the essay and they talk about how they got cut from the team and how devastating it was. And then at the end they say, well, I worked hard, and the next year I tried out and I made it. You know what? I think there's a lot more you could do with that. And nobody really cares about you getting cut from the team, but they do care about how you turn getting cut from the team into something deeply personal and unique to you in the way you think about the world, see the world, live in the world. So to just, repeat that last slide from my primitive slideshow, we're looking for an uncommon reaction or reflection, because that's the growth that we're talking about, to a common experience. And when we talk about a reflection or a reaction, the most important way to share with another human being how you've grown is through your behavior. So I caution students from making claims like, I began to prize my life as a gift every day. All right, that's amazing. What does that look like? How do you, for instance, the COVID essay, which I think maybe John and I, Seraph and I will talk about momentarily. I'm obviously talking about the big essay here, the college essay. Just some bromide, some kind of hollow, statement about how you live your life, but without any behavioral backup. I began to care more about my family after this event that happened that was difficult. What does that look like? I don't want to, don't tell me what you felt, show me what you did, and I'll decide what it's likely that you felt by what you did. So did you start making a point of saying thank you to people? And do you make a point of checking in with people and seeing how they're doing? Did you begin to kiss your parents goodbye in the morning and say, I appreciate you? That matters to people, because just this morning I was visiting a school and people were dropping their children off, and the adults were saying, I love you, see you later, have a great day. And 6 kids in a row didn't respond. They just kept walking. So if you think that sounds kind of pedestrian and, seems like a simple thing, it's not. It's not a simple thing to have that attitude for gratitude. So the second thing that kids think, and I alluded to this earlier, is that it's like an assignment and I have to write a lot. And what I like to tell them, and I think I said this before, is we are going to be looking for ruthless concision. And if you can do it in 400 words, do it in 400, even if you have 600. In my work with students, my main thing that I do when I read their drafts, and I have a student who works with me, just senior at the University of Pennsylvania, who's that I hire to help me. She's a fantastic writer. She was a student of mine at Mercy. I basically cross stuff out. And when I edit a student essay, the words have to belong to the student. Occasionally what I'll be doing is saying, these verbs, okay, that's 6 verbs in a row that are forms of the verb to be. That's not going to cut it, because without active verbs, your language is not, it's not popping out, it's not vivid. Your sentences are not tight, they're not muscular, and they're not propulsive. So I will make those comments, but by crossing out, what I'm trying to do is make the piece of writing basically what a newspaper editor would do for a newspaper writer, where every, in a newspaper or in any publishing industry, every word costs, right? It's like when you make a film, every second of every film, you have to pay for it. So what I do is just focus on concision. And I think that a lot of students haven't been edited that way. And if you do edit your students, if you're a parent or an advisor, that's the best approach in my view. And I have another thing that I call, it's a little severe, but I call it the 4-word rule, that a student shouldn't write 4 words in a row that anyone else can write. Okay. So for instance, a lot of students will write about the death of a grandparent. That's a common experience, right? And they want to write about it in an uncommon way. In order to do that, they have to make it hyper specific. So instead of writing a sentence like, my grandfather died and my family was devastated, a lot of people can write that. If they write the sentence that James Aloysius O'Brien of 152 Seneca Parkway died on April 12th, 2021, period. My family's security, sense of certainty, the Baynes family, was shattered on that day. So that's not the greatest lead, maybe, but the point I'm making is it's about me. I'm not afraid to make it about me in such a hyper-specific way that no one else could write these words. All right. Now, we're going to take a look at the topics in a minute. And a lot of the prompts will say, well, we'll talk about an experience that happens. And then how did it affect you? Well, the problem we have is that most students will write about the experience for 85% of their writing, and then 15% how it affected them. They don't care about the experience. They care about how it affected you. So I want to flip that. And I would like the students to think about moving through the what that the prompt is asking for, the student has chosen, and getting to the how it affected me, how I grew from it, what it meant to me for the majority of the essay. So for instance, I've had students write about their parents divorcing, which is a very common event, and it's a very difficult event, and it affects children for the rest of their lives. So it's of interest to the reader how a student might manage that. But the reader doesn't need to know about all the details of the parents breaking up, or where the student was sitting when she or he heard about it, or how much crying went on and all this. Really what it is like, okay, you just say it, my parents broke up. I'll spare you the details. Here's where I was left in my life and what I had to do and the adjustments I made. Boom, here we go. Let's hear it. See what I mean? So that's also the issue of vulnerability. There's just no way to write these essays. A lot of people think you're supposed to make yourself look good. All right. So if a student writes about her mental health or his mental health and a crisis that he or she had, people say, you can't write about that. You absolutely can and should if you're ready to write about it. Okay. We don't write about things we're not ready to write about. And I always tell students that, you're again, they're trying to pick an uncommon event. So this happened, so I'm going to write about it and I'll read it. I say, you're not ready to write about this. You're going to need 10 years to be ready to write about this. So you have to make sure that something that the student has processed. So when we are vulnerable, that means we're open to growth, right? And why is growth so important? Because that's what college is. That's what education is. That's the whole point of it. So if you're not open to growth, why would we want to go on that bus ride with you for 4 years, right? And see all these sites because you're not open to them. I hope you feel what I'm saying. And here's the 2 things that I think kill students. One is entitlement and the other is grievance. And no one's interested in your grievances. And America is marinated with people who have grievances and who are entitled. And they seem to want to tell everybody about it. So any hint of that in a college essay, and I think that dooms the college essay. So as an example, let's say you went on a trip to Europe. And so you write a college essay. I went to Greece and I saw this and I wrote in this and then I had these meals and then I went to Italy and you know what? Who cares? What'd you learn? And how did you change? And otherwise, don't write that essay because that just smacks of entitlement, right? And I think that a grievance, especially with the COVID essays, everybody suffered through COVID. So if you're writing your COVID essay, I got to check with John Seraphin. I'm assuming they're still asking about them this year. And we'll check in with him in a minute. I'm just about to go back to John with the common application questions. But I just kind of want to end my presentation, this first portion of it, with that idea that you're going to have to be vulnerable. You're going to have to be a truth teller about yourself. Doesn't have to be negative. You know, I've seen some college essays where students have talked about prayer. They've written about prayer. They've written about God. And they can be really shallow, or they can be incredibly moving. And again, all these same rules apply of just being real, telling the truth, being yourself in a really natural, authentic way. And the beauty of that is that if you are yourself and they don't want to admit you to their college, you don't want to go there. It's not a good college for you. If they don't like the real you, they're not good enough for you. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. We shouldn't be staging ourselves, altering ourselves, posturing. We should be who we are. Obviously, the best version of ourselves in writing, you know. But so I'll leave it with that. And I'm going to ask John to put up the common application questions. You may have seen them before. They don't really change. They don't change very often. So we'll kind of go through. Let's pick 2 or 3 of them. I'm a huge fan of number 1 that you're looking at right now. The problem with it, again, is that if the student, for instance, let's say the student's background is ethnicity, and the student is Italian American, and we have a large Italian American community here in Rochester, a wonderful one. So what they might do, some students will do with this, is they'll simply describe all of the cultural kind of rituals and joys of their family, going to grandma's house for sauce on Sunday. And then when they get to the meaningful part, they say, well, you know, it means a lot because it's my family. And so, again, we talked about this earlier. The background, the identity, the interest or talent are secondary. The part of this question that matters is the meaning. And that's the hardest part. So let's say the ethnicity of your family is incredibly meaningful to you. What does that look like in terms of your behavior? Do you ask questions? Have you researched your family history? Do you sit down with your grandmother and say, Nana, I love your stories. I want to know more about your story. Maybe she's an immigrant to this country. What an amazing, traumatic experience. I want to hear all about it. Why are you inspired by it? You know, if you look at number 2, this is the one I was kind of talking about, where like you get cut from the team. So I've had a lot of kids, like for instance, write about an injury. You know, many of our students are athletic. So they'll take number 2 and they'll talk about their injury. And then they'll go into a lengthy description for like 3/4 of the essay about the injury, the rehab, how much pain they were in. And, you know, again, they're not interested. Everybody's had injuries. What they care about is the last part. How did it affect you? And what did you learn from the experience? Especially for an athlete to have her body or his body injured, that's an existential experience, a traumatic experience. And so that would be a question that would be a good one for someone who really wants to dig in and think deeply about questions of, you know, our relationships with our bodies. You know, they're machines that are going to break down and that are ultimately going to not work. That's pretty big stuff. If you look at number 5, this is a trap question. Number 1, they should probably know about an accomplishment, event, or an event. They wouldn't know about a realization that sparked a period of personal growth. But it's a trap if the students just brag, right? And talk about how wonderful they are, or they went to Europe or something. But if you take a look at that, question number 5 sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding. That's the core of that question. That's the reflection and the accomplishment, event, or realization. You may have been bullied, right? If you picked, we know bullying is almost ubiquitous, at least people feeling it, certainly in America, young people. If I were coaching a kid on number 5 and she wanted to write about being bullied, I'd say, start out by saying I was bullied in 7th grade mercilessly online and via my phone. I'm not going to relate all the details here. And boom, now that part of it is over. Because every reader can go, oh, okay, I was bullied. Everybody, my brother was bullied. What'd you do with it? And now the whole essay becomes sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. And so again, that's kind of the theme of my presentation so far. And before if you want to ask questions about any of these, I'm not going to go over all of them, but if you look at the last one, I don't think, John, I can't see it all on my screen, but if you look at the last one, this is a bit of a trap. And I think John will know better, but I think maybe almost a third of students are picking this now, which says share an essay on a topic of your choice. This is a good thing to do. It's free, right? You're able to be freed from the prompt and do what you want. I think it's very important that you pick a piece of writing you've done that fits the purpose of the other 6. It's not you being lazy and pulling out some piece of writing you did in 11th grade that doesn't fit the goal of growth, of demonstrating your growth, your self-awareness, and your self-reflection. So I'll kind of, John, I think I'm just past 30 minutes. So I thought I'll check my phone to see if I have any emails, but if you want to pepper me with a couple questions and we can dig in here a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk for a couple minutes about, we both have read thousands upon thousands of essays. Let's talk about some common mistakes, for lack of a better word, that we see in kids' essays. I think one of the things I think both of us always tell kids is, aim to be likable in your essay. And oftentimes I say it to kids, they kind of give you that puzzle, like, what do you mean by that? Like, how do I be likable? And I always say to kids, it's like, if I meet you for the very first time, you walk into my office and I introduce myself and I start telling you how wonderful I am, you're probably not going to like me very much. You're not handing in a scrapbook to the admissions office. You're telling your story, right? So being likable, I think, is important. When you write about the importance of the early couple sentences in the essay, I think you set the tone if you're going to be likable or not early on. Talk about that for a second, or agree,
absolutely.
disagree?
And I tell kids, I say, look, in the adult world, you walk into a room with a hoodie on and you slouch in there and you, say to the adults in the room, I don't care about you. And, you can do that. You can do that at Fairport High, or even not at Mercy. They won't let you wear a hoodie, but, and essentially you can do that. Like, what do you got, world? Hey, I'm here. You're lucky to see me. And that's entitlement. Right. And that's arrogance. So, they want to see you dance. They want to see your dance moves. And you are reaching there. This is an unknown person to you, but you're describing it perfectly. It's a little bit like meeting somebody on a plane or meeting somebody in a random meetup where, if you basically show no interest in them, a lot of these essays, the supplemental essays, will say, why do you want to come to this college? You don't want to be fawning and, sycophantic and saying, oh, you're the greatest college in the world, but you don't want to be unlikable either, as per your comment. So likable people are curious. They're interested in their own lives and the lives of others around them. Some of the essays, you have a school like McQuaid, you have a school like Mercy where I taught at Aquinas as well. And it's a strong tradition in the public schools as well, not as strong, where service is service is a critical component of the spiritual and emotional intellectual growth. So likable people are people who serve others. And, so if you say, yeah, I went to the soup kitchen 3 times, that's not likable. But if you can tell them why going to the soup kitchen 25 times, now it's a much better essay to write, and why you do it and how you're humbled by it and how it changed your life, then to me, that's likable, right? Likable isn't just, yeah, I'm easygoing. It's you're curious, you love your community, you love your family, as much as you can love them, So I can't emphasize that enough.
You talked earlier about, come out of the gate hard. A common mistake I see oftentimes with kids is that their buildup, it takes forever to get to their point. And I think that's related to knowing your audience, right? These people are reading, hundreds, thousands, possibly over the course of a month or two. And they're not real patient. And, they're not going to, if the beginning of your essay just kind of drones on and really doesn't get to any significant point, that's a problem. So I think both of us always say to kids, hey, come out swinging. There's not a long runway here. Say what you need to say, get in and get out.
I couldn't agree more. And a lot of students are taught to write in a 5-paragraph format, and they think that's actually what good writing is. That is good writing for what that teacher wants in that class at that time in that curriculum. But in this situation, your first paragraph might be 1 sentence, because that sentence has done so much work and set you up and built a frame for you to move into the meat of your discussion. So when I read a student essay, as you're describing one where it has that slow takeoff, and I realize there's some real money lines in there. I mean, there's some really good stuff in that essay, and it's in the bottom half of a 500-word document. I tell kids, I'm not sure they're going to get to that. I'm not even sure they're going to read that far. John and I, in our summer program, we do a mock admissions experiment where the students pretend they're admissions counselors. And I'm shocked by how they skip over the college essays. Well, yeah, I read it, but I didn't really read it. It was boring. And, I said, well, you better remember that. When you write your essay, you want to engage, grab that reader by the lapels at the beginning, make sure they understand what the frame is, what the focus is, and then deliver on it. And so this idea that you have to have a 6-sentence introduction, that's an essay. This is not an essay. It's a personal statement about growth to a very impatient reader.
Another thing I jotted down here was, and this will sound pretty basic, but the importance of writing a grammatically correct essay. It's not a grammar test per se, but it certainly sends a message if your personal statement is just laden with grammatical errors, and it says something about you as a writer.
Probably says something about me and you that we agree on this, because maybe some people think this is prejudicial, but in our country, one of the things we've been doing, and they do it in other countries, is we use people's language skills when they're applying for jobs. And, if you ask anybody in HR what they do with a cover letter with a misspelling in it, a lot of them, not all of them, they're not in all position to do it, but if they're selective, right, they're in HR at Apple, they immediately discard it. You didn't care enough about this document to spell the words correct. Why do I care about it? So, as I tell my students, no one's going to care about your document more than you care about it. And so make sure you care about it a great deal. And then just between you and I, that's a grammar error, of course. Most of America doesn't seem to know that. But, me and John Seraphin were out walking yesterday. These type of things, you're applying to a university that is interested in your ability to grow and learn. And the number one mechanism for growing and learning in the university environment, this has not changed, is your literacy. So your literacy levels are the greatest predictor of your success in college. Other predictors are really important. All right. But in terms of on the academic side of the ledger, this is why the old SAT was just a vocabulary exam. And the old SAT was a grammar exam. And even today, it still is to a great extent, a grammar and vocabulary exam, because what it's telling them is your literacy levels. So it's important, like I said earlier, not to do some phony thesaurus thing, but to make sure that you demonstrate that you can construct a strong, direct sentence. If you're using sentence fragments, it's very clear to them it's intentional, that you're using those sentence fragments as for effect. And of course, that there are no grammar errors. And maybe that seems basic, but it's not basic. It's a reflection on how much you care.
So I just want to wrap this up with two additional points. One is you've talked a lot about the personal statement, and we showed an example, or we showed the essay prompts on the Common application. But in addition to that, many colleges require supplemental essays, and oftentimes kids get surprised by that. So they're thinking, "Oh, I have to write this my college essay." Well, then when you get into it, and you all of a sudden you realize that, oh, by the way, Villanova requires me to, in addition to the Common App essay, wants me to write 2 supplemental essays. Well, I think it's really important for kids to be mindful that that's a possibility and do some research ahead of time so you know what you're faced with. I mean, John mentioned kids could write 5 or 6 essays. In reality, if you're applying to 7 or 8 high-powered schools, you could be writing like 15 essays. MIT requires 9, count them, 9 supplemental essays. They're not lengthy, but they still warrant, and they require some time. So just want to be sure that, that's out there.
Yeah, let me jump in and comment on that. What happened with the Common App was it exploded the number of applicants. And so now you can press one button and apply to 45 schools. Those 45 schools don't know how committed you are to them. So what they're trying to find, they want to find out in the admissions process how much commitment you have to go there. So these supplemental questions are also an opportunity for you to demonstrate, this is a school I really want to go to because I took the time to write this supplemental essay, to research before I wrote it, to make sure I knew a lot about this university or college before I wrote it. And if you slough those off, they're going to say, this kid's not coming here. And I could tell tons of stories about kids who got into school A, like call school A Harvard, and didn't get into school B, and school B is not as selective. And the reason is they didn't put any energy into applying to school B. And they knew it. The school B knew they weren't coming. So you want to make sure they know you want to come to the school. And one of the ways you do that is you write their supplemental essay. You can't turn around and go, oh yeah, I had to write this, I'm so mad. No, if you want to go there, this is how they're going to discern your level of interest.
All right, the last thing I want to do is basically repeat what I said at the very beginning of this presentation, is the added importance that the essay has taken on. And if you look at college admissions and you draw a line right down the middle and you say, okay, there's really 2 components to college admissions. There's the academic side, where they're looking at your grade point average, the rigor of your curriculum, your standardized test scores, in some instances, your class rank, your AP scores, et cetera. And like I said, on that side of the ledger, there are a lot of metrics that are disappearing, right? Like I said earlier, their schools are test optional now. Deciphering transcripts is very difficult. There's grade inflation. Some schools are pass-fail. There's a lot of reasons why it's difficult to analyze transcripts at this point. On the other side is the personal side, or the personal narrative, which really encompasses your essay, perhaps a personal interview, perhaps they're assessing your level of interest. But like John said earlier, the best place where you become human in this process is in your college essay. All right.
And, let's end on that note and just say that without that raw data, the schools are free. They're freed up from the raw data. They don't have to, that's why US News and this whole business of ranking places is probably going to blow up a bit. Never totally, but because what the school can do now is say, well, this candidate who we think is just absolutely spectacular, interesting, a fascinating young woman. We don't even know her SAT scores. We don't know her AP scores, but we know we like her from this college essay. And they're free to offer her admission when they might not have offered her admission 4 years ago when they had more data points. that they had to, produce for the alumni and for US News and World Report. And, letters of recommendation, just let that hang out there. And college essays, they're not really essays, okay, they're personal statements, are huge. And planning on doing both well, making sure you help your recommender write a good letter of recommendation. Maybe that's another session, John, because the idea that this person's going to write a great letter for you and you're not going to support them, help them, ask them properly is insane. And so I appreciate this opportunity to speak to the McQuaid community. And if anybody wants to follow up, you have my email, which is johnburnsbaynes@gmail.com. And I appreciate you having me on, John.
Thanks. I don't think it would be right to end without at least mentioning your PowerPoint presentation. I think it was very similar to the way that I think Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble used to communicate the same way, I think. But I love your high tech.
You're
the best.
simple.
You're the best.
All right,
I
God bless.
appreciate you taking time and sharing your expertise with us. So thanks a bunch.
All righty, take care now.
All right, thanks. Again, for parents and students that are out there, we'll be back at 6:30 with Mr. Ian Mortimer. Ian will be talking about connecting future career opportunities with college major selections. So we'll be back on in about 15 minutes, and we'll see you then. Good evening, Mr. Mortimer.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. Good to be
We-
here.
We are live, and let me do a brief introduction. So again, for parents out there who are just joining us, welcome. This is our second of three virtual presentations tonight. And we have an additional three presentations tomorrow night. And again, all 12 of our presentations this week will be posted on our website. Mondays and Tuesdays presentations are already on our website, and tonight's and tomorrow's will also be on. So I'm really pleased to introduce Ian Mortimer. Ian is, I believe, what, 3 days or 2 days into your new position?
Day three.
3 days in. Ian is now the president of the Golisano Institute for Business and Entrepreneurship, which may warrant a little bit of an explanation about that really exciting initiative that's out there. But Ian has extensive experience in enrollment management at several different schools, the latest one being RIT, and prior to that, Nazareth College, and just an extensive resume and a wealth of knowledge. And I think his presentation will be, I know it'll be very informative. So Ian, I'm going to mute myself, and I'll be right here and probably be chiming in with some questions. But thanks again for being with us.
Great, John. Thank you very much. And hello, McQuaid community. So what I'd like to do is spend some time sharing some thoughts around a topic that I'm not sure gets enough play when students and families are thinking about making a major investment in college, and that is major selection. And the reason that it's such an important conversation or decision is that there's significant economic realities hinged to it. And I just want to get out of the way that part of what I talk about is not going to be around only majoring in STEM or only majoring in something that is obviously connected to the work world. There's a lot of value in studying the liberal arts and the humanities, but I would offer that the way and the approach from which those decisions are made, particularly if you're going to study English or history or sociology or psychology, cobbling together and bolting on different sets of experiences and skills with them just makes them more extrinsically valuable, I'm sorry. And so our time is going to be focused on this really, really important topic. And I know that we won't have an opportunity to ask questions, but if anything comes up that you'd like to have a future dialogue around after the fact, I'll share later in the session my new email address. And then I'd also, if we have time, love to share with you a little bit about the new business school that will be launching in fall 23 here in Rochester, which John had mentioned. So why is this important? So it's important for a variety of reasons, but I tried to distill it down into four major ones. The first is that there is absolutely a hedge or a bet on future earnings that many of you will be taking on as it relates to your decision on where to go to school. And so the relationship between how much leverage and how much debt and how much financing that you will take on as a family or as a student to get to the ideal college or the place that you've fallen in love with or the place that has the major that you want to study, that relationship is really, really important. And I'll say it one more time, in that if you are planning on borrowing more than $3,000 or $4,000 a year to go to college or university, essentially what you're doing is that you're making a bet on future earnings. And if that is a true statement, then the connection to the major that you study and the decision-making process and how you craft and create your set of courses and your skills and your experiences is directly connected to the happiness and the joy that you're going to have because you'll be able to pay that debt off. The second, and I have some data that I'll share with you, and this is kind of I would say a damning part of higher education in its current state, is that a lot of college graduates are underemployed to their education level at the time that they graduate. And what that means is that the jobs and the careers that they come out of the gate with upon graduation are not often jobs that require a college degree. And so underemployment is not something that is commonly discussed in most public policy or most circles in terms of students making a determination on where to go to school. But I'll show you some information that does represent that this is kind of a real phenomena for, on average, about 40% of all college graduates. The more optimistic part of this is that I'm not that old, but I've been around and kind of seen the cycles and the trials and the tribulations of the job market. But I don't think there is going to be many better times in many generations in terms of if good decisions are made in terms of building a skill set that is connected to the opportunities in the workforce. People, students, graduates can be incredibly successful. There is absolutely a transition from, the definition of what hard skills are and what soft skills are, and employers are craving individuals that have both. And so if you play your cards right and you plan accordingly and you're intentional about what you study and how you put together a portfolio of experiences, your lives can be incredibly successful from an economic perspective. And then particularly for the young people, one of the things that I believe to be true through observation and through research is that there's a relationship between being financially secure and living the life that you want to live as a young person. One of the things I love about this generation is that they are they're very into experiences. They're very into travel. They're very into sharing positive experiences with friends and family, and less concerned about, kind of wealth creation and stacking assets, which is something that I think is characteristic of generations before them. However, to be able to travel and be able to live the life that you want to live, debt can be a dark cloud over that ability to do that. And so, again, getting back to this idea that major and being able to select the right course of action for what you study, this gives you a lot more latitude in that area. So this is why this conversation is important. So one of the things that has happened since 2008, since the recession, excuse me, is that every college and university claims that their graduates are not unemployed. And so you hear statistics of 90%, placed, 92% placed, 95% placed, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that data is probably partially true. One of the things I'll talk about is where that data comes from. But for the most part, if you go to college and you are, try to pursue a job after school, you're going to most likely get a job, and that is good. That's a positive. And what the chart on the left shows is generally the unemployment rates for college graduates over the last 30 years. Now, the reason 2020, that's the pandemic. And so you can see that the pandemic obviously had a huge impact on the ability of many college graduates to gather employment. The story that is less commonly told, and it's the one that I'm focusing on because I believe it's really, really important for families and students, is the idea of underemployment. And if you go back to what I had said earlier, underemployment represents someone who is in the workforce, that their education or their skills are more than the value of their current employment or their current salary. And so when you look at recent college graduates over the last 30 years, about 40% on average of all graduates of four-year degrees enter the workforce underemployed. And so getting back to the idea of incurring debt and kind of betting on the future of your wages to justify the attendance at a certain school or, a school that, kind of checks all your boxes, this is a very, very important consideration. And what I'll also show you is that underemployment is oftentimes statistically driven by the major that you choose to study at your college or university. And so if you are concerned about being underemployed in terms of your trajectory after college, then this conversation is absolutely relevant so that you can be mindful in planning to make sure that you're not part of the 40%, but you're part of the 60% from which your wages and your salary is equitable to your education that you have invested dearly in terms of resources and monies. This is a more granular look at the underemployment slide earlier. And what this represents is that it's a pretty steady underemployment reality. So the biggest gap, if you will, in terms of low and high is only about 5 percentage points. And getting back to the previous slide, about 40% of all recent college graduates from bachelor's degrees enter the workforce underemployed. So what are the drivers of this? There's a lot of drivers, and I'll do my best to talk about many of them. But one of them is the major from which you select. Now, I'll say it one more time that this presentation is not about not studying the liberal arts, and it's not about not studying history. It's not about not studying music and things that are really, really important to people. That is absolutely something that people should pursue. And again, I'll show you some ways to hedge against the risk of doing so. But the facts are facts and data is data. And so all of this information comes from the New York Federal Reserve, which essentially manages the information on recent college graduates' performance as it relates to major selection. And so the column on the left represents the majors that, again, coming out of a four-year degree, has the highest statistical reality of creating an underemployed situation. Criminal justice is there because many CJ majors will enter into the police academy or enter into law enforcement. And you don't need a college degree to enter into the police academy or law enforcement generally across the United States. And so that's why that is so that is so high. The same holds true with leisure and hospitality. Although there's all kinds of wonderful opportunities in that industry, when you kind of enter into that field, you have to cut your teeth and do the kind of the basic work that does not require a college degree. And so that's why that is represented at 60 degrees. Many of these are probably not surprising to you. So liberal arts, public policy, fine arts, art history, miscellaneous technologies, anthropology. These are things that you'd probably be not surprised to see as having high underemployment rates. The one that probably is jumping out at you is business management. And the reason that is so high is that an unspecialized business program, they're oftentimes very costly. And many students don't take the time to specialize within their internship or their career placement work. And that's why that generates such a high underemployment rate. So that's the left is the not so great news. On the right is the better news. And these are the majors that have very low underemployment rates. And there's a common thread here. One is that most of these majors result in a formal license to practice that particular profession in New York State, as an example. So teaching, you have to, in many fields of engineering, you have to have an engineering certificate. Accounting, you have to have a CPA if you're going to get the economic lift of that major. Pharmacy, etc. And so healthcare fields, teaching fields, engineering fields, those all culminate in a licensure to perform those particular tasks and skills in the workforce. And that's why the underemployment rate generally is lower for those particular areas. The other area that's red hot is computer science. Right now, computer science is the largest major destination for many students. I think it's number 2 outside of psychology still. But at RIT, as an example, my former institution, computer science represented a little under 10%, actually more like 8% of our total class, which was, 3,000 students. So CS is a huge, huge driver, particularly at STEM schools, although CS is also becoming a popular major at liberal arts schools as well, just because of this data and the promise of having a job out of it that, justifies the expense to study that particular program. So that's kind of some grounding in terms of why this is an important conversation. And so I have a couple of slides here that I'd like to walk through and kind of further talk about what you can do to offset some of these opportunities, offset the risks and take advantage of a lot of the opportunities. One of the things that is understated in terms of its importance is working on campus. And the reason being is that when you work on campus, you're doing three things. One is that you're putting a little money in your pocket, which is always helpful as a college student. Two, you're building a network of individuals that can help you, particularly if you run into a jam or you're needing guidance on how to navigate an issue. If you work within an office or you work within a set of individuals that are staff and faculty, generally they want to care and they want to help. And so that's a huge benefit. And then the third piece is skill development. When you're coming out of college and you have a couple of internships, or maybe you've done a co-op or two, but you also can represent that you had good time management skills because of working on campus, that is a huge benefit from your resume perspective. One of the things that I have found at all three of the institutions that I've worked at, Champlain College in Burlington, Vermont, Nazareth College here in Pittsford, and RIT in Rochester, is that those individuals who work on campus have higher GPAs and they retain and have a higher percentage of on-time graduation. So in addition to all the benefits, economic benefits, there's also, just kind of a better performance generally, which is obviously super important. And then I have some slides and some information to talk about in terms of skills and how to optimize opportunities. So before we even get there, I want to take a half step back and talk about how most families and students go through the college search and college choice process. And this slide, although very busy and graphically quite ugly, does kind of tell the story that many of you will go through in terms of this process. And if you start in the bottom left-hand corner, the way that most students will end up building their first set of colleges or universities is based on a couple of criteria. One is word of mouth. And so we have learned through a lot of analysis, and take McQuaid as an example, that if a student from McQuaid ends up at a school, a college or university for the first time, the chances of another student going to that school the next year or the next 2 years increases by 3 times. And so this is absolutely a word of mouth sociological type of process, particularly in the early stages. The other part of it is that for many students, it's highly rational. And what I mean by that is that many students and many of you on this this call know that you want to study, engineering or business or English or history, and you go out and you look for the best programs that are embedded in the schools that you're aware of. And so it's highly rational in nature, in that there's criteria and there's data and there's information that kind of create the subset of schools that you go through and you kind of create that big list with. I have 3 boys. One is a junior at Colby College up in Waterville, Maine. My second boy is a senior in high school, and he just applied ED1 and got into McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota, which he's super excited about. And then Terrence is in 4th grade, so we can take him and put him to the side a little bit. But for Neil, it was all about the rational classification of schools. He knew that he wanted to go to a NESCAC school or something similar, small private liberal arts. And so by nature of that categorization, which is very rational, he chose to look at Colby and Bowdoin and Bates and kind of that Colgate and Lafayette in that genre of school, knowing that he wanted to study economics at that type of place. And there was a subset that checked those boxes, and away he went. For Kevin, a very, very similar set of criteria, except for Kevin was interested in an urban environment, but still wanted the same attributes as his brother Neil. And so McAllister College was one of only a couple that had the academic profile of the schools that his older brother was looking at, but also was situated in a major metro. And I share these stories not to tell my family story, but to as exhibits that it's very rational in the beginning, and many of you are probably organizing your schools by facts and data. Once you kind of go through and you create that list of schools, it then goes into this very much emotional set of criteria. So you go and visit, and you kind of walk around and you observe around, the environment of the school and the kids who go there and the faculty, and you just kind of get more of an emotional connection to that particular institution. And then the last phase is where you get admitted, and then whether or not it's affordable. And where major selection typically intersects is where in the beginning. And then once it happens, most families and students don't think about major and program until they're already there. And so part of our conversation today is that don't lose sight of the importance of program and major as you go through this process. Many of you will use it as a sorting criteria in the beginning of college search. But it also has, a lot of quality indicators embedded within it. And again, we'll talk more about how to think through and create your own personal journey. But this hopefully frames college search and college choice a little bit for you. So I apologize that this is going to feel very lecture-y, but it's really important. So if you can imagine that when you choose a college or university, and you choose the degree from which you're going to study, the degree type has a huge bearing on how much flexibility or inflexibility that you have in terms of creating a skill set and creating kind of the set of experiences academically that you want to create as they connect to the demands of the job market. And so in New York State, if you're going to study, get a BA, which is typically a BA in English, history, sociology, psychology, oftentimes given at smaller, more liberal arts places. 90 of the 120 credits, so 3/4 of your total program, has to be in the liberal arts for it to be a New York State accredited program. And so what that means is that you have kind of a vast amount of areas to kind of play and put together skills and kind of customize your education when you study a BA, and then your major is usually 30 credits, 32 credits, which is 10 classes. But the academic journey is more flexible and more pliable. If you're going to study a Bachelor of Science, so a BS in engineering, a BS in biology, a BS in chemistry, things that are kind of more hard skill, hard science type of programs, typically half of the coursework is in the liberal arts and the other half is in those major domains. And so when you're studying, as an example, engineering, and you're getting a Bachelor of Science, 60 credits or 20 courses are going to be in the engineering field, which obviously are important for the ability to sit it for the license and do the things that are important. But it lessens your ability to stack additional skills and experiences than say the BA. And none of these are better or worse. It's just the reality of how they're structured. And then the last set of degrees are BFAs and Bachelors of Business degrees. And they have kind of the most rigidity to them, oftentimes because they're very, very dense in terms of their major requirements. And they have about 30 credits of liberal arts courses to work with. And so what constitutes a liberal arts course? The next two bullets represent some things that may be common knowledge or not common knowledge. And so course types that you would think are liberal arts are humanities, arts, music, foreign language, all the things that kind of typically are classified under that area. But also you can take courses in computer science, you can take courses in math, you can take courses in communications, and in some situations, leadership. And those can count to fulfill your liberal arts requirement, depending on the distribution. And I know that this is very, kind of detailed and granular, but there's a headline to this. And that headline is that when you decide to study a BA or a BS or another degree, you're essentially creating the framework from which you have the ability to either customize your program or not customize your program because of the requirements to fulfill the major. Again, BS is having, more major requirements. And this will make more sense on a slide, but I do want to explain this just so you can think through it a little bit. In biology, as an example, you can get a BA or a BS. And so if you really want to get into research in med school, it's typically BS. If you're more interested in kind of taking biology and applying it to other fields, a BA may be more appropriate. So again, thinking through these things it should be part of your planning process. So how do we reduce the risk of underemployment? I'm going to share 2 and 3 examples of 2 and 3 that I think I get inspired by them, and I think they're super cool and super important. Getting back to my guys, we talked a lot about how to structure, a program selection that allows them to pursue what they care about. Neil is studying econ, and he has a minor in classics, actually, which allows him to pursue the classics, which he loves, but he wants to be an investment banker, and so econ is the way to do that. And then for Kevin, he's very unclear about what Artura he wants to do, and so there's some nuance there in terms of how he's thinking about structuring his program. So let's talk first about multidisciplinary majors. Multidisciplinary majors are valuable for a couple of reasons. One is that oftentimes they connect and correlate to specific fields in the economy that are underserved by college graduates. And so over the last 15 years, particularly, and RIT is a shining example of this, employers will say, we do this work, and for us to do this work, we need graduates with this skill set, and graduates with this skill set should be called X. And so colleges like RIT, colleges like Northeastern, colleges like Drexel, as an example, who have really heavy co-op programs, they build their majors oftentimes based on what they're hearing from employers. And so I have a list of examples of these majors that are very unique and very, very niche-y, but they connect specifically to a job outcome that is typically in high demand. And so we'll go through some of those major selections. The second kind of unique nuance of multidisciplinary majors are majors from which leadership at colleges and universities have essentially taken different components of current majors and put them together and package them together for usually a couple of reasons. One is that students like, variety, and they want to do different things within the construct of a set of major requirements. But for similar reasons as the formal majors, industry loves individuals who represent multidisciplinary thinking. And so let me define multidisciplinary. That is, as it describes, a discipline would be English, history, psychology, economics, engineering, and multi is more than one. And so that is the definition of a multidisciplinary major baked within a set of requirements. So what are some majors that represent kind of this cobbling together of different domains and different subject areas, and literally laying out students going through and completing a third of this, a third of this, a third of this, a quarter of this. And in the end, that represents a major. And so I went through and I pulled some of the best examples out there. American University of Washington, D.C., Patriot League school, very competitive. A lot of the students who go there are interested in government, international service, public affairs, those types of areas. Their most popular major at AU is an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary program, has the acronym CLEG. And CLEG is Communication, Legal Institutions, Economics, and Government. And CLEG majors typically have incredible options in the job market, because employers and agencies, when they look at that title, they can see that the individual has strong writing skills, good public speaking skills. They have some knowledge about the law and the legal structure of our government. They have an economic background, and they understand federal and state legislatures. And so for AU, this is kind of their shining brand major. Again, it's their largest program, but there's nothing kind of distinctive about it other than the fact that it's one part communication, one part legal institution, 1 part econ, and 1 part government. At RIT, I'll say we just because I'm still kind of in the withdrawal process. We have a major called Humanities, Computing, and Design. It's literally, 1/3 humanities, 1/3 computing, and 1/3 design from each of those respective colleges. And the jobs that these students create for themselves are incredible. And the reason that it's such a cool major is that it represents kind of the soft skill communication, critical thinking element that the humanities provides with kind of the hard coding, design, computing skills that many employers are looking to fill for a lot of tech jobs. And so, we've had graduates go through this program and get jobs in artificial intelligence, which would make total sense to you. So again, 1/3 humanities, 1/3 computing, 1/3 design. Clarkson has a major called engineering and management, half engineering, half management. These graduates kill it. I know of one graduate recently, went to Tesla, became Elon Musk's, although his popularity is highly polarizing. But essentially, he was hired out of Clarkson because he had business and management acumen, but also could speak engineering language and understand the nuances of that. And then this copy to the right, and I apologize that it's fairly granular, but Notre Dame had, and I use the term had because I was reading up on it today. They had a program called Science and Business, and when we were at Notre Dame a year ago, this was their shining major. It was the major that the three of the student ambassadors were in. They were getting huge jobs in pharmaceutical industries. Because again, they had the business side and the science side. And recently, the College of Business decided that they didn't want to share anymore, and so they kind of usurped the power of this program and embedded it in Mendoza, which is their business school, which is really unfortunate in my opinion. But it's just a quick, kind of a set of language that just speaks to the power of these two things combined within a curriculum. So again, these are all examples of majors that combine disciplines for the benefit of jobs, which is what we're talking about. The other types of majors have less kind of obvious cobbling, but they were created to solve a business problem. And so let me kind of walk through a couple of these. So top left, again, RIT being one of the examples. There's a major at RIT called imaging science. And for those of you who have a phone, which is everybody, imaging scientists essentially are the individuals who build the technologies that translate optics and lenses to data. And so if you can imagine, satellites that are capturing images and creating data out of it. If you can imagine a driverless car that is being created, that whole machine is essentially a computer that is constantly assessing and evaluating the environment around it. That's what imaging scientists do. It's a combination of physics, statistics, and math. Physics, statistics, and photonics. So a really, really cool major. RIT can't produce enough of these graduates, and they start at $100,000 or more with just a bachelor's degree. But again, multidisciplinary, more than one topical area. Nazareth has a great program. For those of you who are interested in research and want to have a distinctive academic experience, they have a BS in toxicology. And during the pandemic, the faculty and the students that were active in the toxicology program got a kind of a real life laboratory of how to learn this field. Imagine all the toxins that are created and how individuals absorb them through food or through air. And a lot of this is about environmental issues as well as it is kind of the biological realities of infusing toxins. The lady on the right who used to work for us in the admissions office, she was a fully funded PhD to Rutgers. She is all over the world doing research and presentations as a result of her background in toxicology. Top right is the packaging science program at Clemson. Packaging science is essentially the intersection of engineering and creative design. Again, Clemson, RIT, Michigan State can't produce enough of these graduates, and it's a very hands-on, fun orientation to engineering. You can use your creative skills in that process. And then at the bottom two, given that it's a Jesuit audience, Loyola of Chicago has an incredible supply chain management program. And what supply chain is the intersection of is technology, marketing, management information systems, leadership, logistics, a lot of different domains packaged into a single program, again, to meet the requirements of the job market. And then the last major is a little bit more of a humanities example of a multidisciplinary program, and that's professional writing at Champlain. Individuals who went into professional writing, it was a combination of obviously writing, literature, English, but it also had a lot of business in it because the goal of all of these students was to become a published author at the time of graduation. And to do that, you have to understand public relations, you have to understand marketing, you have to understand the dynamics of the publishing industry. So really, really, really cool program. So just to kind of reframe it, there's these majors that are kind of formal combinations of things, and then majors that are unique to a specific job, but they both check the boxes in terms of their market value and their market relevance. So what if you don't want to study kind of something that's niche-y or something that is combined? Another way to go about creating a kind of a distinctive, relevant set of skills for employers is putting major minor combinations together. And the way that I would look at it is that some of you on this call want to study something that is in the humanities, that's something that you deeply care about, that you love, and you should absolutely study it. The thing that I would offer is that if you want to hedge against the chances of being underemployed, package it together with a hard skill minor. And so data science, computer science, cybersecurity, something that kind of exhibits a functional skill set to an employer, but doesn't, kind of wash away the value of what you've done on the humanities or social sciences side. And on the flip side, if you are a kind of an engineering-minded student or something that's a little bit more functional in nature, if you want to differentiate yourself, even though many engineers do not struggle with underemployment, but if you really want to kind of cascade to the top, combine it with something that exhibits your ability to think and deal with people and engage with cross-cultural conversations, that is absolutely where the secret sauce is in terms of being distinctive in those areas. So I just kind of put some examples together. On the left are kind of examples of more, kind of critical thinking, communication, humanistic, types of majors and programs that are super important. Philosophy gets a bad knock. I have talked to tons of employers that they crave philosophy majors, but only if they exhibit the ability to apply it towards something that is relevant to the job market. Philosophy is a great pre-law major, but it's even more impactful and more important, especially if you can put it together with tech. Artificial intelligence is essentially philosophy plus tech. Logic and ethics and all those things that are going to be so important to the future of the world is essentially the intersection of philosophy and technology. It's a wonderful opportunity to enter into something really, really cool, as well as, commit to something that you love on the major side. So again, these are just some examples of things that by cobbling them together, you're reducing the risk of underemployment and you're increasing your chances of falling into something really, really powerful. Environmental science as a minor, a lot of consulting organizations look fondly upon that because environmental issues are everywhere. And then on the flip side, these are kind of the areas that have really intentional job placements and trajectories, and these are the low underemployment areas. But again, if you want to build a capacity, to not be outsourced or not be, someone that doesn't get a chance at a leadership role once you have those jobs, I would absolutely encourage you to double down on one, maybe two minors in the humanities and exhibit your ability to deal with people, understand culture, understand difference, be a leader amongst your peers. Having a minor in these areas absolutely is a head start to that area. So I have a couple of more slides, and then I got to check my time, and I'll see if John has any questions. As I mentioned before, on-campus employment, super, super important. And I for the parents and the students, don't worry about not having time to do this. Many on-campus jobs are only 5-8 hours a week. Everybody has 5 to 8 hours a week in their schedule to commit to something that can be really, really powerful in building skills, building community, and also to employers, it's evidence of time management, which is obviously a huge, huge requirement for many jobs. And then a couple of parting thoughts. As you're thinking about where to go to school and what to study, do a quick analysis of the economic environment of where that school is located, because chances are most of the opportunities that exist are going to be within 100 miles of that institution. One of the things that was important to Kevin, my son, is that he wanted to be in an urban area. And he also, to his credit, did some digging in terms of what is the economy like in the Twin Cities. And it's one of the best economies in the nation. And so that was kind of a checkbox for him in terms of his decision-making process. Knowledge rate is the rate from which college or university knows the percent of their college graduates that they cite statistics for. So when you hear 95% employed within 6 months, the appropriate follow-up question is, what is the knowledge rate from which those stats are grounded? And the national average for knowledge rates in colleges and universities is usually in between 30 and 40%. And so if you can imagine that less than half of the graduating class is grounded in those stats, that should be buyer beware. That's something you should dig deeper on. Study away and study abroad, huge drivers of job opportunities. They are, without a doubt, they exhibit so many life skills and so many cross-cultural capacities that employers absolutely are seeking. And then the last thing I'll say is that once you arrive at your school and your destination, there's a push to drop classes to kind of lighten the load. At every school I've been to, and this is a national statistic, if a student drops down from 15 credits their first 2 years, their chances of graduating on time lessen by 2.5%, and their chances of not graduating increase by about a point or 1.5x. So I say this, it's a little off topic, but as you're having conversations, once you get in school, stay at a minimum 15 credits a semester, no matter how painful or how difficult it is. I think you'll find that you'll be happier and you'll be on time. So John, how are we doing on time?
Ian, we're good. We just got a couple minutes left. I was hoping you could spend a minute or two talking about your new initiative and the Golisano Institute for Business and Entrepreneurship. I know it just came out in the news a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just curious. I think a lot of people are curious as to what it's all about.
Yeah, thanks. Love to. So Tom Golisano, who many people know either by name or personally, is a very generous person in terms of his thoughts and his ideas. And one of the things that he feels is that for some students and some families, kind of the automatic default to go to four-year college is creating problems. And I, working in the college and university world, I couldn't agree more. We need more options for individuals that are seeking maybe to enter the workforce in a more intentional way. They want to start their own business and they need entrepreneurship coaching. And so it's kind of a new dynamic, particularly coming out of the pandemic, that Tom feels we need to help provide some options with. And so the Golisano Institute for Business and Entrepreneurship is a 2-year program, 12 months. So it's 4 quarters a year, 8 quarters in total. And the curriculum is grounded in entrepreneurship skill development, but is woven in with a series of employers. And actually, many of them are behind me. And so all of the companies, their logos behind me, will serve as partners, and we'll be doing interviews and essentially viewing the institute as a farm system for hiring individuals to fulfill specific roles and jobs that they have. And so it's not a four-year college degree, but the way that I would describe it is that it's an alternative for individuals who know that they want to enter into business, are looking for a more accelerated path to get there, and maybe a little bit more price sensitive or cost sensitive than others. Tom is subsidizing a lot of the cost for the institute, and tuition is $8,900 per year. And then we have grants and scholarships that are in addition to that. This is kind of it's an awful chart. And I was hoping you would ask the question. That's why I put it in here. But this represents kind of the program. There'll be three types of students: those out of high school, those who went to college and maybe didn't finish, and those who are looking to skill up. And then the first quarter is all about building your plan, in terms of what you want to achieve. Quarters 2 through 7 are the coursework, mostly business curricula, marketing, supply chain, finance, accounting. And then the last quarter is all about planning for your launch. And the launch will have 3 outcomes. 1 is a job. 2 is working with a coach on building a business. Or 3, we have a couple of partners where if a student is interested in pursuing and completing their bachelor's degree, they can do that as a third option. So that's our story. You'll be hearing a lot more about it over the next 6 months. So thanks for the opportunity to share.
Thanks. They couldn't have picked a better man to be in charge. So good luck to you with
Thanks.
that. And Ian, thanks again for taking your time. I know you got a crazy busy schedule right now, 3 days into a huge job. But thank you for always sharing your expertise with us and with the McQuaid community. Greatly appreciated.
Anything for you, John. And thanks to everyone, and good luck.
Thank you, Ian. And again, for parents, we have one last presentation tonight at 7:30. We'll be back on with our own Jeff Griffa, college counselor here, be talking about Naviance, which is a college planning tool that we use with students and parents. So we'll be back on in about 15 minutes. Hello, Mr. Griffa,
Hello there.
right down the hall from me. To parents and students, welcome back to and welcome to our third and final presentation of night 3 of College Information Week. My colleague Jeff Griffa is with us tonight for the last presentation. And Jeff's going to speak about a powerful web-based program that we use here called Naviance, which is a good planning tool for students and parents as they go through the college search process. We do a lot of work with Naviance and certainly try to educate the boys about the different uses in Naviance. So Jeff is going to walk you through how Naviance can be an effective tool for you. So again, thanks, Jeff, for extending your day, which started off early this morning, and 12 hours later it'll end. So again, thanks for doing this, and I'm going to mute myself now and turn everybody over to you.
Well, thanks a lot, John. Doesn't matter if it's a long day. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy to be part of this this college week as well. I think this might be the third, maybe fourth year we've done it. Definitely the third year we've done it online. And it's always exciting because I get to hear from other people in the field. I learn from this week just as much as we all hope that you folks who are watching can learn from it as well. So it's exciting. It's a good time of year. I had mentioned on Monday that, we're kind of wrapping up the work, the college search and application process with the seniors. And we're kind of springboarding into our work with the juniors. And then we'll get back to the seniors as to help them with their decision-making process, after Christmas and throughout the rest of the spring. So I do hope that you get a lot out of this presentation tonight. And I also hope that you get a lot out of all of us. Anne Marie, John, and myself have been doing this for a very long time. And I said this on Monday, but I think deserves to be said again, is that you have a team of people who really love what they do, who are on your side. So please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us whenever you need it. So there's John and myself, and then we have Anne Marie Galetto, who is actually the site manager for Naviance. She's the one who's responsible for setting it up so that it aligns with our application process. She's the one who sets all the settings as well. So to make the Naviance program appropriate for each grade level who's going to use it. And she also sends and troubleshoots all the documents to colleges for the seniors who are going through this process. I also want to say thanks to Amy Sheffer, who's working behind the scenes and organizing this live stream process for us, and her work is invaluable. And I also work with Scott, Margaret, and Chris, the school counselors. So you've got a great team up here. Everyone's on your side. So without further ado, I should start talking about Naviance. We started using Naviance, I think, around in 2007, and it's continued to evolve since then, and rightly so. The admissions landscape has changed tremendously, especially within the past few years, but it has grown a lot since 2007. And, not only has the program evolved throughout the years, but the program can evolve within a school year as well. So I think it's important to mention that to you. There's been times where I'm on it early in the day, and then I come back later on and something looks different or something has moved. Don't be alarmed. Naviance is known for making changes midstream, and they're always trying to improve the interaction with the software program to make it much easier for all of you. It also makes our counseling job a lot easier. I should say more efficient, because I remember, around this time of year, getting closer to Christmas break, licking envelopes for 3 hours straight, getting all the forms and transcripts and rec letters sent out to all these colleges. And it was in my mind, I thought, I was doing good work, but when I look back on it, it's a colossal waste of time. So now with Naviance, we can just press a few buttons and submit all of these documents to the colleges, and we can spend our time supporting students and families throughout this process and get more face-to-face interaction. So it's really served all of us. And I think it's increased the quality of the job that we do with parents and families. And I hope it improves the quality of your experience as well as you go through the application and college search process. So it's a great tool. So Naviance, right now, the current 11th graders are already registered. Last year, the school counselors that I had mentioned went into the classrooms and they got the sophomores registered. I think they went into theology classes. And they introduced the different career assessments and personality assessments that I'm going to walk you through today. They introduced those to the students and talked about the importance of them. So parents of juniors, current juniors, will receive registration for their accounts after junior parent night. And our junior parent night is taking place January 19th, 2020. So this coming January on the 19th, John and I will be in the auditorium doing a live presentation about the college search and application process. So, that information, in addition to all the quality information you're getting this week, I think you're going to be prepared. Younger students, 9th and 10th graders, they're going to be notified about their registration in the future. Okay. So just like I said that what happened with the current juniors, I'm assuming that the counselors are going to go into the current sophomores classrooms and get them started with the process as well. So just because we have this kind of laid out systematically, it does not mean that you can't get registered early. So if anybody is feeling motivated after this program to start, playing around, researching, learning about colleges, doing career assessments, please reach out to Anne-Marie Galetto. Okay. So in addition to being the site manager of Naviance, she's also our College Advisement Center manager. So the College Advisement Center is a great place. It's a really nice space for students to use to work on their applications, to get help from any one of us. We have college visits, admissions presentations that go on in there. We have outside organizations come in and do specific presentations. And once in a while, we'll have an alumni career forum presentation take place in the Advisement Center. So I think, juniors should start getting used to frequenting that space. The seniors are in there all the time, and we love it. So get in touch with Anne-Marie Galetto if you do want to register for Naviance before we start to do it in a systematic way. Okay. So what is Naviance? Well, first of all, you got to know how to get to it. So in order to get to Naviance, I'm going to share my screen so I can show it to you. All right. So probably the easiest way to get to Naviance is just to go to your address bar and type in student.naviance.com/MJHS. And once you get to this site, just bookmark it so it's easier to get to in the future. The other way that you can get to it is by going to Schoology. And when you're in Schoology, you can choose the guidance group. And from the guidance group, you'll look on the left-hand side and you'll find resources. And when you click on resources, you'll see that there is a link right there set up for Naviance. And you click on that and it'll take you to this page, okay? But again, just bookmark it so you can get back to it. I think what the students do, they just Google Naviance every time and click on the first link that shows up. So you could do that too, I suppose. So what is Naviance? It's a web-based program. It's a resource for students and parents. It encourages and supports post-high school career and college planning. And it has two components. The first is Family Connection. So Family Connection is specific to McQuaid Jesuit. It's what students and parents will use for the college and career search. The other section is called Naviance Succeed. Naviance Succeed is what we counselors and Anne-Marie use to manage and track applications. And we also submit supporting documents like transcripts, letters of recommendation, application forms, and all of those necessary supporting documents which make an application complete. We send those directly through Naviance. Okay, so I'm going to log in here. Oh goodness, tractors. These always stump me. I think I got this one though. This didn't do it too. I didn't have to do that during my my run-throughs earlier, but that's what always happens. All right, so here we are at the Naviance homepage, and on the Naviance homepage, you see up here we've got the there's three sections here that we use more often than any of the others: the self-discovery, careers, and of course colleges. John, Anne-Marie, and myself, we use this one all the time, especially now. The seniors and the juniors use this most frequently. Some juniors, mostly sophomores, will use the careers, and hopefully everybody uses self-discovery. Okay, and I'm going to show you all those sections later on. And just so you know, once you're in the program, my advice to you is not to use the browser up here, because if you do that to navigate back and forth throughout the program, you're going to have to refresh the page and everything, and it just kind of makes things clunky see. So whenever you can, try to use a link that's already within the program. There's going to be back buttons that you can use. That's the best way to go about this. Okay. All right. So you have these, by the way, this is our mock student, Kent Dorfman, maybe a familiar name for some of you folks out there. But at any rate, I'm going to walk you through this homepage, and I'm going to talk to you about these 3 sections. All right, so on the homepage, you can see here, we've got a quick link if you decide to get in here and you want to talk or just search for colleges based on their name. All right, that's an easy thing to do. Then you go right to the college profile, which again, I'll show you that later. And then you can start investigating the colleges. Up here, this is simply shows the sections of Naviance that I use most. The heart just means favorite. Right here is a section where you can give feedback to Naviance. And so, like I said earlier, you know, if Naviance kind of changes midway through, you know, the year or in the middle of the day, this is because students and well, all Naviance users can give feedback about their user experience. And so it's obvious that Naviance does listen to that, and that's why they make the changes. Here you have a link for messages. Kent Dorfman has about 53 unread messages, which he should be checking on more frequently, because you can see there's some good stuff here. You have scholarship notifications, you have deadlines to be mindful of, transcript request deadlines, you've got registration for ACT deadlines, you have announcements for, well, in this case, the Alumni Career Forum. So we use Naviance to target certain groups with whom we want to communicate. From time to time, we'll look at, you know, students who have saved a particular college in their colleges I'm thinking about section of Naviance. If we want to target them because of a scholarship opportunity, or if there's an admissions counselor coming in to visit that day, that's not during the regular admissions counselor visit season, we can always reach out to those students to see if they're available to talk to that admissions counselor. So it's important to pay attention to these messages. They also come to the email as well. So I think most students will open it up there instead of going to the Naviance page to actually open it. Okay. Right here, we've got the About Me section. And a lot of times I have students asking me, I don't know my GPA. Can you help me? Where do I find that? So the easiest way to do it, especially if you're off site, you can just go to Naviance, go to the About Me tab, click on My Account, and then you'll see that you have these tiles here with information. And right down here in the academic tile, you can see that this student's GPA is listed right here as weighted GPA. That's the only section where we are going to populate. We don't update the class size every year. We tell the students what that is so that they can fill out their Common App properly. And we don't put the deciles in there because that will allude to class rank. And we only use the weighted GPA. Okay. All right, let me go back to the home page. All right. So moving on down here, this is simply as it looks. It's just a message board for the seniors, letting them know what's going on. If there's anything new, probably when we get back from break, there might be new messages about mid-year reports, etc. Again, we have another link to my favorite links that I use most frequently. Sometimes we'll have some tasks for students to do. That might be setting up a meeting with Ms. Goletto to go over their college decisions. It might be to go in and complete a short survey if we want to do that with students, okay? And if we have something new, we could populate it here. But quite frankly, what we usually do is use the Naviance email and the Schoology blast to communicate a lot of this stuff to students just to make sure that they do get it, all right? And then when you go down from there, we've got the view matches. Try and decide which college is right for you. Check out those that are looking for students like you. And this is just like somebody, you know, a friend or relative saying, hey, why don't you go check out this college? You might like it. So you're probably, as students that are going through this college search and application process, excuse me, you're probably going to hear from a lot of people suggesting colleges that you should go check out. And that's fine. But you should, I think you really owe it to yourselves to do that research using the tips that I gave you guys on Monday about being an educated consumer, just to find out if these places are going to be the right fit for you. All right. There's no sense in going to a college that your cousin recommended unless you're exactly like your cousin. You have the same interests, same values, etc. Okay. So make sure however you find that that college name, that you go through that research process yourself to make sure it's a good fit. All right. And then down here, we've got the document resources, and document resources populated by us. And as you can see, the topics that are listed here, we have some things that are going to be helpful for juniors and seniors as they go through this process of searching for and applying to colleges. Okay. So you can check out these on your own time. We've got some great stuff, especially in the college essay writing, that will go along with what you heard earlier this evening if you watched the essay conversation. So the advice that you heard earlier this evening is just, it aligns nicely with what we have always been telling the students. So this is good stuff. All right. So check this out on your own time. I think you'll find it very valuable. Going further down, just a few quick links to sites that we thought all the colleges should know about, or I'm sorry, all the students should know about: Common App, Coalition App, College Guy, FAFSA, okay? And we can add more to that if we choose. And then we have SAT dates and deadlines and SAT dates and deadlines. Anne-Marie does this. She puts the table together so students can find a quick link for their SAT and test registration deadlines, okay? So that's the home page. Not much to it, but still, I mean, as you can see, when you click on one thing, you can go deeper and deeper. So how else can you use Naviance? Well, let's start with the self-discovery section. In the self-discovery section, you're going to have 7 assessments that students can go through. And these assessments will introduce careers. They'll introduce ideas about a student's personal their personality type. They'll get information about, your skills and your personal qualities. But by no means are these tests designed to tell you who you are or what you should do, okay? I think it's important for students to think about themselves. When they read the information that they get as a result of taking these tests, it's important to think about their life experience, their experience here at school, their experience in the classroom, interacting with others, friends, families, loved ones, and just to think about, oh yeah, I can see what they're saying here in terms of my introvertness, or my introversion rather. That makes sense to me. So it's really up to the student to make the decisions on who they are, okay? But it's also important because, like I said, it helps them develop insights. And I think one of the most important parts of this process of searching for colleges that are going to be a good fit is that students get to know themselves, get to know their values so that they can make informed decisions based on those values and their interests and their needs, okay? And these tests will help you do that. So the first one I want to talk about here is the Achieve Works Intelligences. And basically this helps students uncover different intelligences and explains how to use them. The assessment will take about 15 minutes and has 54 questions. So basically, here's an example of one. They'll say, tell us how much each statement is like you. So it says, think about your abilities, strengths, and where you seem to excel. So it says, I enjoy writing and I'm good at expressing my thoughts in written form. And then the student can rate that in terms of not at all or completely true on a scale of 1 to 7. So then in the results, they discover how they deal with information, how they solve problems and create things. And they can learn how to use those strengths in school, work, and even in some other activities, which is great. So the assessment, they give students a more rounded view by looking at the following types of intelligences. So this is like Howard Gardner. So it's got emotional, body kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, linguistic, logical, mathematical, musical intelligence, naturalist intelligence, spatial and existential intelligences. So it's really nice. This is really designed for students between 8th and 12th grade. So I'm going to take a minute here and show you what the results look like. You can see, I mean, they call them superpowers here. You can see mine are musical, intrapersonal, and body kinesthetic. So when I review the results, it just takes a quick moment to show me what my results are at a glance. I can see the full scale of my scores. Intelligence as you, this kind of, talks about more in detail what this musical, in my case, intelligence is, strengths and challenges associated with it. And he even talks about some people who are, really good in this musical intelligence area. And then again, you can keep going through and looking at all of the, the different intelligences and read what they're about. And then beyond that, you can talk about and learn about how to develop those intelligences. So they'll give you some advice, okay? And then they talk about a person's emotional intelligence and what's your emotional intelligence score. And again, it's for reading and thinking about themselves. So if a student's looking at this and say, yeah, I'm adaptable, I'm able to deal with new and changing conditions. If I have a student saying, yeah, I am, then I would say, well, give me an example of that. So it's not just reading it and saying, all right, this fits with me. Make the students talk about it, because that will make them get a firmer grasp on whether or not this is actually true for them. All right. And then it has some recommended careers, which is great. And anytime you click on a career, you're going to get an overview of that, skills and experiences, wages. If we had any upcoming events, those would be listed here, but typically we don't have anything listed there. But this is similar to the Occupational Outlook Handbook that I talked about on Monday. So that in combination with a site like Naviance, that can really give you complete information about these careers that you're interested in. All right. So I'm going to go back to self-discovery and talk about the AchieveWorks learning and productivity test. And this helps students identify sensory and mindset preferences so they can develop study practices that work. So they can find out how they learn best and how to be most productive. This is about a 20-minute assessment, and it's about 69 questions. So this asks questions like, do you like to study when it's completely silent? Do you like to have music on? Do you like to lay down on the floor when you're doing your work? Do you prefer to sit? So it's really a student getting, trying to get an idea of what is the best environment for them to study. All right, so let me view the results and show you that. The results will really, they'll include tips for making studying easier and more effective, and how you can be more successful in class, essentially. So you get your summary about the report. You can read that. And here are my sensory preferences, and they'll talk about what they mean. Environmental preferences, you can see this stuff, temperature, time of day, physical setting. They seem like, simple things, but, all of us have had times when we get right in that mode where we can focus. And it's because we're in a place and we're feeling comfortable so that we can do nothing except focus on the task at hand. So this is stuff I think that students should really get in tune with as they move on through high school, especially when they get to college, so that they can build on those skills and fine tune them, and also find a place within that college environment where they can kind of recreate that environment where they work best. The next one I want to talk about is the AchieveWorks personality. And this used to be called Do What You Are, as it says right there. And this helps students identify personality type by asking them to choose scenarios that best represent how they would behave in real life. It takes about 15 minutes. There are 36 different scenarios. Of course, it could take longer than 15 minutes, depends on reading speed and stuff. But here's an example of a scenario that it gives you. It says, remember, don't be influenced by how you might aspire to act or what others might expect of you. So what we have told students when they're doing this is not to overthink it. Don't create scenarios in addition to the scenario that's listed for you. Just answer it, your initial gut reaction. How would you deal with this situation? So here are the two scenarios. I call up friends to see if they want to get together, and I enjoy parties because I get to see lots of people. Or I would rather hang out with a close friend or two rather than socialize with a lot of people I don't know very well. So as you can see, it's kind of like that introvert versus extrovert kind of question. So the results will include personality type, and they provide tips to achieve success in a way that works for students, as well as best fits for the career. So I'll show you mine. I did mine back in 2015, as you can see right here. And the results are still spot on. Of course, I'm older, and I've had more time to think about who I am in certain environments. But right here, you can see the visual for my strongest, personality types. And this doesn't necessarily mean that I'm always introverted. There's going to be situations where I'm an extrovert. And so on and so forth. So you're not always one thing or the other. It can depend on the environment that you're in. Okay. And then, oh yeah, I wanted to show you this. So you have like this description of who you are. It's kind of like that horoscope, fortune cookie kind of style thing. But again, I've thought about my life a lot, especially as a counselor. And we try to reflect on, our life experiences so that we can be better at what we do. So when I read this, it doesn't seem very generic. It's very easy for me to say, yeah, patient caring. I'm interested in others' needs and feelings. I mean, that's what I do almost every day. At least that's what I aspire to do every day when I'm working with my students and colleagues. So this stuff can be very true. Then you get to see the more in-depth description of these personality types. Okay, so students can kind of take a look at that, talk about the best learning strengths associated with my personality type. Gives a description of my work and productivity, and then communication style, etc. All right. So you can see, once again, you have like a ton of information for students to think about themselves, and then you get recommended careers as a result. So again, same process as before. All right, so let me go back and show you the next test that we have, which is the Achieve Works skills. All right, so this looks at skills that are critical in both school and in the workplace, and they ensure students are prepared for college and work ready with a greater understanding of their skill set, and they give ways to develop individual skills. High school students can, they'll learn what their top aptitudes and soft skills are, and how they can be built over time. The cool thing about this test is that you can take it. They recommend that students start taking this as a sophomore, and they can take it a couple times a year or once a year to kind of watch how their skills have evolved through time. And this Achieve Works skills assessment is based on 50 years of, they call it ongoing Hexaco research, which is an acronym. And they provide insight into the complex skills defined, which are identified as critical for academic and employment success. So they have 15 distinct skill facets that comprise 5 skills within the report. So they're conscientiousness, creativity, critical thinking, leadership, and social emotional. And so again, they can learn about their skills and how to develop them, and then they get a list of careers at the end. So no shortage of career recommendations here. All right. So you get a summary, just like all the other assessments. Then you get a description of here's the main skill set, and here are the skill facets that make up this skill set. All right. So again, more insight, reflection, decision making for students. Okay. And then again, they can look at careers at the end of this. All right. And by the way, you might notice that this heart is filled in. So anytime you hit that heart, whether it's a college or a career, it'll be saved to the appropriate folder, whether it's my favorite careers or the colleges I'm thinking about folder. All right. All right, let me get back up here. And now we're going to talk about the Career Cluster Finder. And the Career Cluster Finder, so this indicates like activities and school subjects that students like or dislike. And then they also identify personal qualities that the students possess. Again, this one takes about 20 minutes, and it has 108 questions. So here's an example. It's like, choose whether you like or dislike this activity. Read and follow blueprints or instructions. Read and follow blueprints or instructions. So if you're thinking about that, this is alluding to maybe, an engineering degree, maybe a skilled trade, maybe construction or construction management. So it's pretty cool. In your results, you'll learn how well there are 16 national career clusters. You'll learn how they fit into your own interests and qualities. So here are my results. Again, a summary, and here's the cluster and my score. So whenever I say, I like or dislike, obviously the likes are attributed to these different clusters. Okay, and then you can start looking through those and, look at the different careers that are associated with them by clicking on it. Okay, whoops, go back to Career Clusters Finder. And again, you can just scroll down and see like all the skills that I had said yes to. Okay. All right, and then we have the Career Interest Profiler. So the Career Interest Profiler, that captures all the interests that student has. I shouldn't say all. It captures students' interest to help them determine personality traits and suggest careers based on the U.S. Department of Labor's data. This test takes about 15 minutes and includes 60 questions, and they're all based on John Holland's code. So you've got realistic, they have these personality traits that John Holland codes. So the personality traits are realistic, enterprising, conventional, social, artistic, and investigative. So whenever students answer questions on this test, the questions are similar to like, do you like to build kitchen cabinets? So when students are taking this one, the difference between this and the personality type is that we want students to kind of overthink the questions here. So are they really asking me about, if I like to build specifically kitchen cabinets, or am I thinking carpentry, working with my hands, construction? So if that's the case, then yeah, you want to say yes to it. And each of those questions is connected to a personality type. And when a student says, yes, I like it, then that personality gets a point. And then the 3 highest scoring personality types gives you your Holland code. And so mine's conventional, realistic, and social. Okay. And then from there, you can view matching careers. And these ones are listed in terms of how much education or preparation, as it's listed here, how much preparation you need. And so towards the bottom, you get to stuff that's, obviously takes a lot more, education and prep. And then after that, we have the Strengths Explorer. And the Strengths Explorer assesses 10 themes for individuals, and it identifies each student's 3 strongest emerging talents, such as confidence, dependability, whether or not they're a future thinker. And it provides explanations for those themes, just like as the other assessments do, and strategies for capitalizing on each of those. And it also gives action items to students to gain insight into the greatest talents, natural patterns of thought, feelings, and how to leverage those qualities in their classroom life. And this one can get pretty extensive. So they give you, here are my top 3 themes: organizer, dependability, caring. That should be good for a school counselor, I think. And then again, you can see related careers. I mean, you've seen enough of those already. You can also view the full report. It gives me all that information that I want and more. But the other thing, which I think is cool, and that's debatable, is that you can have like a workbook here. So I got to be honest and say that I've never had any students, to my knowledge, actually start using this workbook, but it's catered to me, so I can use the themes that I got as a result of this assessment, and then start, kind of filling out this, they call it a playbook here. And you can start journaling, you can start reflecting on your experiences, and give, right here, things I do well, things that I need to improve on. So anyway, this is good stuff if you want to be really intentional about this. Okay, now I am going to use the back button to get back. Okay, so those are the assessments that students can take. And like I said before, it's really important that students take their time on these if they're going to do them. And I highly suggest that students do try them out. And as I said, they're not to predict, they're not to define who people are. They're there to gain insight. They're there to help students learn their interests and values to be better at this college search and application process. Okay, so let me go back to the home page, and I'm going to show you the careers tab, but I really only want to show you one thing. If you want to go, I had some of those things saved. You saw I'd click the heart. So under careers, I go to my favorite careers and clusters. Anything I saved is going to be right here, so I can access it later, just like I would from my colleges. Okay. And then you can explore just by searching and clicking on career clusters and pathways and specific careers. Okay. But I want to show you this Explore Road Trip Nation videos. This is a fun thing for students to do. They can hear firsthand from people who want to tell the stories about how they got to their careers, and share the personal qualities or trials and tribulations that they endured to get to their careers, and talked about, it took resilience. So students can look at this by themes. If I want to look at stuff that, I got this job by chance, it took a lot of courage to get to where I am. They can look by specific leaders, so they can look for if they know people's names, they can click on them and hear their story. So it's just kind of like, it kind of brings it to life, what it's like to get to certain careers from one person's perspective in this case. All right. So now let's go to the college page. All right, so on the college page, you have a lot of good resources here. Finding your fit, researching colleges, applying to colleges. This is really set up for the seniors, so I'm not going to go into this today. Scholarship and money, I'm just going to show you that it's there. There are a number of scholarship search tools out there. So if students are wondering about how to search for scholarships, just come see us. If you wanted to click on the list, you could do that. And you can start seeing what's out there from specific colleges. But if you want to know about like regional or local scholarships, come talk to us about those. And also pay attention to the messages that you get from us via Naviance and Schoology about these things, because we're always posting, some kind of scholarship that's available. All right. All right, so I want to show you over here, we have places to obviously find your fit. So we have the college super match here. So this is a college search tool. I'm going to start over. So this is pretty cool. Pretty much there's thousands and thousands of colleges out there. So as I said on Monday in the presentation about being an educated consumer, it's really important that students think about the environment that they want and what they're also bringing to the table as an applicant. So they're always looking for that compatibility between this, who I am as a student and, this college that I intend to apply to and hopefully enroll at if I like it enough. All right. So when you go through these kinds of programs will help students, narrow down that list from thousands of colleges that are available to a manageable list to start researching based on their own interests. All right. So I'm just going to do a couple here and show you how this works. So any program is going to have these similar characteristics or filter criteria. So I'm going to start with location. Okay. So you can do this a couple ways. You can search by state or region. You can also search by distance. So if you have family out in North Dakota, you can type in their zip code and say, I want to look for colleges within a 200-mile radius. I think you'd have to be in a 200-mile radius out there to find a college. Or you can search by state or region. So I'm just going to keep it simple and go to New York. Okay, you can also search by region by clicking on one of these to choose several states. And then I'm going to go small city, suburb near large city, suburb near small city. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for those. I'm going to close that. And then I'm going to go to, I'm already down to 28, just on that location alone, which is amazing, from thousands to 28. Then I go to academics. And I'm going to click on bachelor's as your traditional four-year degree. And when I go over this with students, I explain what all of these concepts mean. And then I'm going to search majors. I'm just going to type in psychology. That's what I know. Let's go psychology general, wherever it is. It's in there somewhere. There we go. And if you listen to Mr. Ian Mortimer's talk earlier, he mentioned the benefit, the financial benefit, return on investment benefit of looking for, if I'm going to go for like a social science or a humanities, maybe I can find something like a hard skill minor to kind of couple with that to make me more marketable in the workplace after I graduate. So you can do that as well. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to leave it here at psychology. All right. And then I'm going to close that and just show you how you have admissions here. I always tell students to kind of leave this one alone for right now, simply because they don't have all the data yet. Juniors haven't finished this year, so they don't have a 6th semester GPA. Many of them have not taken any SAT scores. So it's really difficult for us to think about, yeah, you should be looking at schools that are really selective, or you should be looking at some open admission colleges. So I ask students to leave this blank right now, instead really focus on the fit, okay? So what did I get? So I've got these three areas here. And I don't know if you noticed this, but I can change this from must have to nice to have. So if I'm thinking location, all right, it'd be nice to be in New York, but there are some states pretty close by that are just as close as going up to the North Country if I wanted to go to St. Lawrence University. So I might be able to make a quick trip down to PA right at the border and go to college there. So at any rate, you can change must have to nice to have, okay? And then down here, you can see the match. So this is showing that I have 100% match with the College of St. Rose. Why that is, click on it and it tells me. And I'm looking, well, University of Vermont, that's showing up because I had said that New York would be nice to have, but it's not a must have. So I have more options for colleges to look at, okay? And if I decide I want to save one of these into colleges I'm thinking about, all I have to do is hit that favorite tab and it shows up, okay? Let me go back to colleges home because I know I'm running short on time. College match, I showed you that on the home page. It's the same thing. Okay, so you can access it in 2 spots. And then college events, this is great. So you can see what events colleges are hosting. So if you wanted to, as soon as I get off of here, you wanted to hop on and listen to St. Thomas University of Canada do a virtualized campus tour, you could do that. So this is pretty cool. It just makes more colleges accessible to more students. Scattergrams, this is great, but I'm not going to show that to you here. I'm going to show it to you in a different spot. The advanced college search, this is similar to the super match. Again, you see those same types of filter criteria up here. And all you have to do is go through here and pick your criteria, and then you can view matches. You can save your search. I have a lot of searches that I've saved for demonstration purposes. You can also save your searches in the college super match, which is a new development this year. It wasn't there last year. So that's something that they needed to improve upon, and they did. Okay. So colleges I'm thinking about. Anytime I favorited a college, it's going to show up in this list. All right. So this list is an important bridge between the student and the counselor when we're not face to face. So when I get really bored in the summertime and I'm interested to see what Kent Dorfman is thinking about for his colleges, I might pop on Naviance and start poking around here. And I'll see the colleges that he has listed, and I can see what his interest level is, which is pretty neat. So students, I think this is the coolest part of this. Students can rate, you know, where this college is on their list. Okay. And this can change. I might be thinking College of St. Rose is my first choice, but then tomorrow I start looking at Fisher. I'm like, wow, I love these guys. All right. So you have a link to the college profile by clicking here. Right here, you have delivery type. And this means that this college will accept all the documents that I talked about earlier that we can send through Naviance. They can accept them electronically, and the CA just means it's a Common App college. This right here means that the student has added this college to the list. Counselors can add colleges to the list. If it said counselor, it would say counselor in green letters. If a parent added it, it would say parent in red letters. Counselors can remove and add colleges, but I don't do that without talking to the student first. Parents can add, but they can't take colleges off, which might be good to spark discussion. Expected difficulties here. If we were to use this, we could put in our impressions of, you know, if we think this is going to be a reach for a student, if they're going to be a competitive applicant, or if they have a, you know, they're likely to get accepted. Okay. You then have application deadlines. This is not the end all be all. You should always check deadlines on the college website. Any information about admissions should be looked at on the college website for your most accurate, up-to-date information. Okay. And so you can also hit the, get those scattergrams that I've been alluding to for, this is the 3rd time now. You can reach it from this page as well. But I'm going to show you St. John Fisher, okay? St. John Fisher and all these other colleges have this little star here that just means that they offer an extended profile. And that extended profile means that you can do virtual tours. You've got videos and extra photos here that just make this a little bit more lively for the student, and they get a better sense of what this campus is like just by seeing the pictures, okay? So you have these tabs up here. You've got overview, studies, student life, admissions, costs. So you can click on any one of these areas just to, you know, get more information about them. On the overview, it's essentially your surface level stuff. You can change your income bracket to see the average net price. So again, a lot of this stuff, you see graduation rate from 4-year to 6-year, acceptance rate, okay? So all of these numbers I talked about on Monday when I discussed being an educated consumer. So now you've seen these for the second time if you watched that presentation, and now you can think, all right, I need to look into this a little bit more to see what this really means, okay? College overlaps is here, and basically that means that the students who applied to Fisher also applied to these other colleges. So again, if I'm looking to grow my college list, I can just click this and get some other suggestions if I didn't have to log back in, okay? Studies, this shows your top areas of study. It just means you're most populated, not the best, okay? And then you get, student to faculty ratio, class size, student retention. Again, those numbers I talked about on Monday. And then you get to see a list of all the other majors that St. John Fisher offers, okay? Student life is exactly what it sounds like. So when I talked about on the college super match, how I didn't want you to start, clicking on all like the diversity and the cost and everything, is because you can find that information right here. If you put in too many filters on those advanced college search and college super matches, you're not going to get any hits. So I like to leave those very general. And then when students want to get specific, then they can start looking at this information to get a better sense of what the demographics are like at that school and decide whether or not it's going to be a good fit. Okay. And in terms of the research, this is a great place to start. It really is. Here's the admissions page that I was talking about, and we have the scattergrams. The students love these, parents love these, I love these. It's a wonderful tool. As you can see right here, this blue dot is our mock student, Kent Dorfman. And so if I'm counseling this student in terms of what his chances are of getting into St. John Fisher, I say you're a pretty darn competitive applicant here, okay? Because you can see where their average GPA of acceptance is an 88.41, and their average SAT is an 1180, okay? So those two lines intersect right in the middle there, and you can see like this scattergram here shows that, you can see where they accept students, and the red X's are those who are denied. So this helps us feel fairly confident in terms of, talking to students about, admissibility, okay? And then you can get to the cost section. And this is, again, this is stuff that I talked about on Monday. Here's that information about aid. You can do your income bracket to see what the average net price would be for this college, on the room and board and tuition costs, all right? So there's a lot of good information here. Let me go back to the homepage because I know I have run out of time. But I do want to tell you, if anybody's feeling motivated to, start playing around with this program and wants to get into it before, we start doing that programmatically, please contact Ms. Galetto. You're not going to screw up this program. The best way to learn about it is just to poke around and play. Click on colleges, read about the colleges. You can connect with colleges. You can request information from the colleges. It's a really powerful program. It gets pretty darn deep. And I think it deserves your time. I think the more information that you gather from using this and then other resources, the more confident you and your students will feel in terms of this application process and the colleges that you're going to apply to. So that's my presentation for Naviance. I think it's a great program. Reach out to us when you want to start using it to get our help.
Thanks, Jeff, for a really nice presentation. As you can see, Naviance is loaded with resources and materials that we use, parents can use, and kids can use. So again, thanks for sharing that information with us.
My pleasure.
So that wraps up our program for tonight. We'll be back again tomorrow night for night 4 of College Information Week. We have 3 presentations again tomorrow night, starting at 5:30, 6:30, and 7:30. At 5:30, Matt Avara from Wake Forest University will be on speaking about the holistic admissions, the shaping of a freshman class. And at 6:30, Stan Zatkowski from Boston College will be speaking about the benefits of a Jesuit collegiate experience. And at 7:30, Darisha Washington from Jackson State will be on speaking about the importance of historically Black colleges and universities. So one more evening tomorrow night. I hope you can join us, and thank you for being with us tonight. And thank you, Jeff.